Welcome back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. My name is Juri Love. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we are recording episode 138. Before I introduce my guest, let's introduce my book, which is the same title as this podcast, A Gift from Adversity. A Gift from Adversity by Juri, Juri, Love, is available on Amazon. The subtitle of this book is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. After I wrote this book, I got a lot of messages from all over the world, and people shared their stories. And I felt compelled to start a podcast where people can talk about their challenges, but not only that, tools that they use to overcome and a gift that came from it. So let's invite our guest. Hi, Bill. Thank you so much for coming in today. How are you
My
doing?
pleasure. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Good. So let's start with your name, where you coming in from today, and what you do, and if you have any social media or website that you want to promote.
Okay. So my name is Bill Lee-Emery and I live on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. I'm a coach, an author, a speaker, and I've been in the personal development field for about 45 years, I guess. And you can tell by my grey hair that I'm not 25 anymore. My website is Thrivingaftercancer.info. And you'll excuse me because I'll be sipping a lot of water because what I actually had was throat cancer, which means my salivary glands aren't probably as everybody else's are. So I'll be sipping water as we go along.
Thank you, Bill, for coming in from Australia. I'm very excited to have you on my show. So let's dive into our first question, which is adversity. So can you tell our audience what was your adversity?
Okay, so I'm 74. I've never spent a night in hospital except maybe when I was born, and I certainly don't remember that. I've never had a serious illness. I broke my nose when I was a child. I broke my toe, but that's it. I've never really spent any time in hospital. And in August of 2022, I was at a men's gathering. I was presenting a couple of workshops, and I could feel a lump here on the side of my throat. And it was hard. Now, normally lymph nodes are tender, and I was thinking maybe it's a lymph node. Anyway, I waited a couple of weeks. It was still there. Went to the doctor. So scan after scan after scan, and then we discovered that there was a lump here, but the main cancer was at the base of my throat. So this was very new to me. I'm used to alternative healing, natural healing, chiropractors, acupuncturists, homeopaths. I don't hang around hospitals or pharmaceuticals at all. So this was something of a totally new experience for me.
So can you tell us a little bit more when you got diagnosed? How did you feel? What was the process like?
Mm. Um, so as I said, I felt it here, and then it progressed, and then I found out what was going on. And the throat cancer itself, one of the things that happens is it becomes very hard to swallow. It's like swallowing razor blades. So I lost my appetite, which is one the other thing that happens. My taste buds went out the window. Now my partner, Julie, is a great cook, but everything tasted like cardboard. So it was, for me, it was quite a challenge. Now I'm used to doing, mindset things. This is my business, what I do. But to deal with this was a completely new experience for me. So I had to learn how to do things differently. I had to become um, very careful with simple things like having a shower, because I had chemo and radiation part of my treatment. My immune system was shot to pieces. My red blood cells, platelets all went down the gurgler. So um, I had to be very careful I didn't pick up any bugs. So they also, because of throat cancer, they put a feeding tube in my belly, which means if I can't swallow anymore, at least they can feed me through my belly. And that was an extremely difficult time because I'm not used to taking painkillers. So when I had the op, it's a half-day thing. They give you full anesthetic and knock you out. So at the end, they said to me, "So here's some, you know, hardcore painkillers that you could take, or you can take a couple of Panadols." Well, good old hippie me, I take one Panadol, which is just absolutely does nothing. So imagine that you haven't done any exercise for a while and you decide to do some stomach crunches and you do 100 in a row. And then you try and lie down slowly. The pain was excruciating. And so what I learned from my naturopath is sometimes, you know, this is a sprint. It's a 7-week sprint of treatment. Actually went a bit longer than that. But in terms of, you know, some people go through a period of years of treatment. Mine was relatively short. It's very intense. So sometimes I just had to bite the bullet and do the things I needed to do. So it was pretty challenging, I have to say.
So, Bill, tell me about stigma around cancer in Australia. When you found out, did you tell everyone, or did you were you afraid to tell people? Did you have any backlash, any stigma or anything like that in Australia?
No, not so much stigma. I mean, unfortunately, cancer's common around the world. It's interesting though, when I did tell some people, their response would be something like, "Oh, gosh, that's terrible, that's horrible." And you know, most people have got a story about cancer, either their own or someone that they know, someone in their family. So what I found was people would take their story, their narrative around what cancer means, and dump it at my doorstep. And I had to learn to be very careful about other people's opinions about cancer and their stories. So suddenly I became very good at being able to separate other people's trauma around cancer and my own approach to what was happening to me. And of course, some people, you know, a lot of my friends in natural therapies were kind of surprised that I went down chemo and radiation. And for me, it was like, you know, and I totally respect people, whatever decision they decide to do with their own treatment. So it's my body, it's my choice. And it was suggested to me that yes, I could wait. I went to see an ENT guy, ear, nose, throat surgeon, and he said, "Yep." I said, "Can I wait 6 months and maybe try some things?" He said, "Sure, you can do that." But I was fortunate that I found it as stage 1, so right at the beginning, if you like. Well, it had been around long enough to materialize, but it was stage 1. And he said, "You know, right now you've got an 85% chance of dealing with this now. You could wait 6 months, but we don't know in 6 months what you'll be dealing with. Will it be stage 1? Will it be stage 2? So I decided to go down, hit it hard, hit it once, get it done, and then use all the other things that I know, my contacts, my network around, naturopathy, chiropractic, acupuncture, all the things that I've been involved with for a long, long time, and many, many friends in that area to support me through this journey and post treatment. So, it's funny. And I too, when I think about when people tell me that they've had cancer before my lived experience, my response would be, "Gosh, that's terrible." But it's not terrible. It doesn't have to be a death sentence anymore that we used to think it is. So often people say, "I've got cancer," it's like it's death. No, it's not a death sentence. Now it depends on the type of cancer, the depth, the stage that it's in. But it's so easy. And for people listening to this, if someone does tell you that they have cancer, please don't do "Oh, that's horrible, that's terrible." That's your story. Don't dump it on their doorstep. They've got enough things to deal with without you yeah, doing that to them. Better to ask some questions like, okay, so how are you dealing with it? How are you managing? Is there any way that I can help and support you? Would be my suggestion. Would be a better approach.
So, how has the treatment impact you? I know, so you went forefront with the chemo and the radiation stuff. How was the chemo?
The chemo was once a week, and that was like a 4-hour treatment that I'd do. Um, one of the things they would give me was steroids to deal with the chemotherapy. But the steroids, so I'd have that on a Wednesday morning. By Thursday morning, I was bright, alert, full of energy because of the steroids. But then the steroids would take their pound of flesh, so to speak, and Friday afternoon, I'd start to find my energy going down, and by the weekend, I was just like flat as anything. So while the steroids did their job, they certainly took from me, and I had to ask my doctors to change the dose that they were giving me so we could manage it. Never really worked out that well, I have to say. The radiation, it can be very, very targeted. Radiation today, as it used to be 5 years ago, was very, very different. They've made lots and lots of advances. So I sing in an a cappella group. So I said to them, hey, listen, I don't want to end up being a bass at the end of it. So I'm a tenor, which is here. I don't want to be able to sing down here. I want to keep this. So they can be very targeted. So because it was down here, this part got fried, and you can see my beard doesn't grow here. And that's because of the radiation. It's on this side more than this side. So some of the effects of that is it's affected my thyroid gland. I have to have natural thyroid extract tablets because my thyroid got fried. It's down here. My salivary glands got fried. That's why I sip a lot of water. Um, and there's effects from that. I get a dry mouth. That affects the salivary in my mouth, which affects what happens to the enamel on my teeth and my gums. So and they don't really understand all these things, but I didn't really understand these things at the beginning of treatment. I actually read a report. It's got 5 pages of the side effects of chemo and radiation. But then it's a balancing act. This can become a very serious thing. I know 2 friends might have died from throat cancer. So I know people that have not done well with this kind of diagnosis. And I was determined, I want to hang around more. I still got things to do. So it's a balancing act. So what are the things that I deal with now? And what are the things I can use from what I know in my network of how to support these different things? And that's really what I'm doing. I'm managing the process and the program that I'm on.
Did you lose any hair during the chemo?
No, this is how it is ordinary. No, I didn't. There may be a few little bits, but really no. So my chemo, for some people when they have chemo, they go bald. No, not for my cancer. No, that's one thing I suppose. Not that there's a lot up there anyway.
So, when you are dealing with your throat cancer, how was your mental health? How was your mental stage like prior to your diagnosis and then the chemo and the radiation? Do you recall how you were feeling as far as the mental health goes? Were you okay? Or were you really upset, sad? Do you remember any of these feelings?
Yeah, it's all very clear. So when I first had the diagnosis, I was actually at a men's gathering. I go to twice a year, and I was presenting 2 programs. So when I felt this on the Friday night, I had to wait a couple of weeks. And then there was ultrasound, there was another scan, and another scan. So I actually had time to consider that maybe what I have here is quite serious. So it wasn't just a go and see the doctor, you've got cancer, like a quick thing. It was, I had time to consider the possibilities of what could be happening. And when the diagnosis did come, it wasn't that much of a surprise. You know, my partner and I, we've been talking about it. I've been considering, you know, how am I going to approach this? Now, the doctors, several of them said there's two things that'll make a difference besides the treatment that they were proposing. One is support, and my partner, I couldn't ask for anyone better in terms of giving me support. She also actually worked for a medical doctor, and so she was able to read blood test results with a lot of accuracy. So when we get a result back and we talk to the doctor, Julie would say, so what does this mean? What about this? And she was able to question those things. Well, I wouldn't have a clue, but I don't know what all those things mean and the consequence of those things. So she was able to give that support, and many friends around me, I have to say. But the other thing the doctor said was critical was mindset. So I have 45 years of training in mental discipline, in visualization and emotional resilience. So all my training, I'll give you a quick story. I was in the waiting room and couldn't help but hear other people's conversations. And the cancer diagnosis is an event. And for some people, this event, they will spiral down. And for other people, they will spiral upwards. And any adversity, and you know this personally, some people will crumble. And it will be devastating to them. And their approach will basically, they'll fall apart and their life will fall apart physically, mentally, emotionally. But for other people, they take this experience and they make something precious from it, as you have done with your book and with many other people that I've met. So for me, my approach, so I thought about this, and one of the things that I decided that this experience could either be a gift, a blessing, or it could be a curse. Spiral up, spiral down. I was not going to make this a curse. So I decided early on, even before my diagnosis became official, was that this was going to be a blessing. Now, I had no idea how this was going to show up, like how is a cancer diagnosis going to be a blessing? But I have to say, it has been, because there's some things that I've gained from this experience that have been priceless. All your guests, they've done exactly the same thing. They've gone through all kinds of really hard challenges that for a lot of people are mind-blowing, that how someone can go through something like all those things and not only live through it, but thrive from it. So I wanted to heal through it, and I wanted to thrive after it. I didn't want to be a cancer survivor. The survivor sounds like you're hanging on for grim death. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to take this and make it something, to make it something special. You may have heard the phrase, squeeze the lemon. So, you know, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. So I want to squeeze this lemon. I want to get all the juice, all the gifts, the precious insights, the bits of wisdom that would come from it, not only personally for myself, pardon me, but also to share it, because all my life, that's pretty much what I've been doing. I'll find something that's of high value to me, and I'll find some way of sharing it with other people. And that's really what I've done in my professional life. So at a very basic level, while I was in the middle of this, not in hindsight, but in the middle of this, thinking, how can I make this a blessing? And I saw a friend of mine who had stage 4 prostate cancer, and he'd had a 7-year journey. through this outside one of the clinics. And he said to me, "It's weird, Bill, but this has been such a blessing, such a gift." I'm going, yeah. If you could say that after 7 years, that I can say this after my short sprint, even though it was intense. And also learned you can't compare one cancer with another, even two people with the same diagnosis, different bodies, different backgrounds. Um, yeah, you can't compare them. They're different, they're individual experiences. So that's one of the foundation things that I did, and it has been a gift. I wouldn't have imagined. So in December this year, I'll have a PET scan, which would be 2 years post-treatment. And in that PET scan, they'll see if there's anything left. And if there's nothing there, then no more PET scans for me. And basically, if anything was to show up in this 2-year period of time, it's going to show up in December. But the way that I'm going, because every 3 months I get checked, they put a camera down my throat and have a look. It's all going fine, and all the things that I'm going to do is supporting that. So, I mean, the test will come in December, but I'm thinking way past December, like way past. There's so many gifts that have come from this. It's kind of a bit hard to explain. I'm sure that you would understand from your experiences, but until you've had lived experiences of something like this, it's a bit hard when you're in the middle of it to go, wow, this is going to be great. Maybe great's not the right word, but there's going to be some good things coming from this.
So we're gonna switch to the tools part of it, and then move on. But before we move on, I want to ask a couple questions. So when you are dealing with the throat cancer, what was the most painful thing that you had to endure? Was that before the treatment or after treatment, during the treatment? Like how would you describe having a cancer throat as a throat cancer, sorry, to somebody who has no idea what that is?
Okay, so for your viewers and listeners, just swallow. Just notice how easy it is to swallow. Now imagine that someone got a pack of razor blades and put them down your throat. Now try and swallow. And that was what it was like every meal. I had to have 5 meals a day, little bits, because I couldn't eat big meals, and everything had to be soft. I couldn't eat toast. I couldn't have anything crunchy, because my mouth, basically, the cells in your mouth are replenished faster than anywhere else in your body, which makes sense. If you can't eat, can't swallow, you're dead. So they replenish really quickly. But under radiation, they get fried. So my mouth was like very, very tender. So swallowing was incredibly hard. I had to swallow some painkillers to allow me to eat a meal. And sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. I tried different combinations, but mostly it was just like every time I swallowed, it was a painful experience. That was one thing. And the other thing, and I won't dwell on this, but probably one of the most painful things was 4, maybe 5 days of constipation. And if anyone here has had 4 or 5 days of constipation, you know exactly how painful that is. And I won't go into the gruesome details of that. But the other thing was when I had the feeding tube put in my belly, and I didn't have any of the hard prescription drugs, and I should have done. That was extremely painful, but was probably what was even more painful than the physical pain was seeing the pain look on my partner's face as she saw me in excruciating pain. And sometimes I think it's harder for the carers than the person going through it. You know, I can deal with my my physical pain, and I can, work with my emotions and my mind. Um, but seeing the person that you love in pain uh, was one of the hardest things. Excuse me. So constipation, somebody else's pain, the pain in my belly, not being able to swallow, not being able to taste food. Those are some of the things. There are other things, but really they were they were the hardest things to deal with. Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. And then, as a mom, when my own pain, like you said, I can take it. But when you see a child going through
Yeah,
trauma, pain, crying, that is a completely different scenario and set of pain. It,
yeah,
it breaks your heart to pieces. And the
yeah,
fact that I can't take their pain, if I could, I would. And that's hard.
yeah. And I think every parent, probably mothers in particular, can relate to that. When you see someone, your child in pain, you want to take away. I mean, you can't. Um, and the Buddha said that pain is inevitable. If we're alive as human beings, we're going to experience pain. Every living thing experiences pain. But he said that suffering is optional. It's like an optional extra. And for me, I'm understanding that pain's going to be part of this process, but the depth of the pain and the suffering that I experience from that is influenced by me, and I have some agency, I have some influence as to how much I suffer, and um, and how much I don't. And because of my training, I know how to reduce my own suffering. And I've been doing this for a long time. I know how to deal with my emotional. So, emotions don't go like this. I like this squiggly line that goes through ups, downs. Um, but I have certain ways of dealing with my own emotional state and boundaries that I have with myself, other people. So all those things, when I look at being in the waiting room, listening to other people's stories, you can't help it. Some people spiraling down. I had an advantage with them because I had 45 years of training in dealing with mental and emotional um, balance, resilience. Um, and I was going to use every single thing that I knew, every single thing that I knew, and I did.
So, Bill, you mentioned a couple little bits here and there, some of the things that you use to overcome, but let's shift our conversation to the tools that you use to overcome your challenges. And this is a favorite part of my podcast because
Okay.
every guest who came to the show, you're my 138th guest. Everyone who shared their adversities had very unique techniques that worked for,
Ah,
and then I learned so much for the things that actually work not off the internet or books. Something something that already helped you, saved
okay.
you through the challenges. So, what would you say those tools that you used?
I got a stack of them, but I'll keep them to a couple. Otherwise, we'll be talking for a couple of days, and we don't have really time for that. So the first thing was, is it going to be curse or a blessing? That's the first thing that I did. And the second thing is, many people who have a cancer diagnosis, they go to war with their cancer. Wars are very popular things. The war on drugs, the war on homelessness, the war on poverty. the war on terrorism, the war on this, the war on that. But the thing about wars, it divides, and both sides ramp up their armaments, if you like, to attack the other. And I know there's some very famous people who've gone to war with their cancer. They give it a derogatory name. And they treat it like an enemy. My approach is more about collaboration. I don't want to fight my body. Now, it's no surprise to me that my cancer is here in my throat, which is the throat chakra, which is about self-expression. And some of your listeners and viewers will know this. So I didn't end up with bowel cancer or lung cancer. It was here. So there are reasons for it being here. And I can track back what they are, and I've resolved many of those things over many, many years. But some things I've gone back and resolved. So for me, I want to collaborate with my body. And I want to, you may have heard the expression, keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer. So why would we keep our, quote, enemies closer? And that's because if they're this far away, we know what they're breathing, we know what they're thinking, we know what they're doing. If they're on the other side of the planet, we've got no idea what they're planning and scheming. So part of this was bringing all the things within me, within my psyche, within my background, within my view of the world. How come I've chosen this? How come my body and I've chosen this? And resolving those things. So I would collaborate with my body. And part of that, and I've been doing this for a long time, but I bet every viewer, every listener, if you have a pet, a dog, cat, a budgerigar, a goldfish, whatever it might be, you will talk to your dog or your cat. So why do we talk to our dogs and cats? Well, because we love them, because we want to connect with them, and we want to deepen the relationship. Now, I'm a veggie gardener. I love veggie gardening. So I talk to my plants. I talk to my broccoli. I talk to my spinach. I talk to my lettuce. And we have a good, so I'm paying attention to them. I'm getting feedback from them as to what they need from me. So with my body, I wake up in the morning and I'd talk to my body and say, hey, body, here we are again. Today might be a chemo day or a radiation day or whatever it might be. And I'd be in constant communication with my body. And with my coaching clients, and over many, many years, if I were to show them a transcript of their internal dialogue of how they talk to themselves, it would be a horror movie. Because most people are so tough, so hard, they're so judgmental, so they're so critical. Now, my body has to go through radiation and chemo. That's an onslaught that my body is not used to. I'm not going to add to that insult a vicious internal dialogue of criticism, of put downs, and why are you doing this, and all that kind of chatter. So my approach is much more caring, supportive, encouraging. So I would sit and I'd talk to my body. Let's say we've had a kind of a tough day, and I'd sit and I would debrief what was been happening. So my body felt heard, it felt listened to. And normally I don't pee at night. I'm pretty lucky, I guess, for my age, male. I don't pee at night. But during treatment, I would wake up 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and I want to pee. So instead of before cancer, I would have, if I woke up 3 o'clock and wanted to do a wee, I would go, nah, it's all right, we'll do it in the morning. It's cold outside, let's do it. So in this time, if my body was saying I want a wee, I'd get up 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, I'd go do a wee, come back, go back to sleep again. So I was listening to my body for what it needed, not for what was just convenient for me. So I learned to have a very different approach, which meant my connection with my body grew deeper. It grew deeper than before. And I've always had a very good relationship with my body and with myself, but I've learned that through training. 45 years of doing all this work, you get to go, wow, here I am, warts and all the good stuff, not so good stuff, and love all of me. So that was definitely a part of what I did. And the other thing, and I mentioned this because this is really important. And it kind of goes back to what I've just been talking about with, connecting with my body. My body is going through a chemical and a radiation onslaught. It has got a lot of things to deal with. And I'm very good at boundaries. So I'll give an example of this. We knew I had cancer here. We didn't know it was anywhere else in my body. So I had a PET scan, which would tell me, is it anywhere else? And if it was anywhere else, that's a completely different story I was going to be dealing with. So I had the PET scan on a Monday, and I was supposed to talk with my doctor on Wednesday. He got COVID. So that was put off until the Friday. So I've got 5 days of not knowing, is it just here, localized, or is my body riddled with this, which would be a very different prognosis. So I had 5 days, and what I didn't, except for maybe once or twice, I didn't catastrophize about the worst things that could happen. I didn't play mental horrific movies that this was going to kill me, that this was the end of my life. If I had done that, it would have stressed my adrenal glands, my kidneys, my liver, my nervous system. It would have added a whole bunch of stress into my body, and my body had enough to deal with. So mentally, I work with the Australian National Skydiving Team, and these guys jump from 6,500 feet. I'm not quite sure what that is in meters, a long way up there, and they do formation work. And we were blessed and privileged to work with them for 10 days, and in return for us sharing what we knew, they threw us out of airplanes, and we did 14 jumps in 10 days. From 16,500 feet. And they do precision work. So they can't be sloppy about their visualization. They have to be very, very precise. So I know how to teach people how to be very precise in how they visualize. And that's a skill I have myself. So I knew I had to have very clear boundaries around where I allowed my mind to go in order to keep myself safe. But I also had very clear boundaries when someone said, oh, that's, you got cancer, that's horrible, that's terrible. I'll go, no, it's not horrible, it's not terrible. I've got a good chance of dealing with this, and I'm managing it. So I would not let other people's cancer stories into my own narrative. But, I'm a human being. I didn't do this perfectly. I remember one day I was sitting outside the table, and I was obviously feeling a bit sorry for myself, and Julie, my partner, saw me, and she just put a hand on my shoulder and said, you can take charge of the story you tell yourself, because I'd forgotten. I was telling myself, a sad story, and I just go, I've got the skills, I know what to do, so let's go back as to what I want, not what I don't want. And that was a critical thing. But I've learned to do that. Sure, I slip up sometimes. We all do. But it's just getting back on the right track. And so there are some other things there too. But that are some of the main things that I learned to emotionally help myself through this, and also mentally help myself through this. So those two things are things that I've got experience and training and a lot of skill with. So I was certainly going to use that for myself, and it's worked. Because I'll just tell you, when I was going through treatment, all the doctors and allied staff, they say to me, "You're amazing, Bill." I'm going, well, I don't know what amazing means. They've just been nice, they've been kind. And one of the health practitioners said in 17 years, she's never seen anyone, given my conditions, and my conditions deal with this as well as I had been doing. Going, okay. So there's some things that I'm doing. You know how it is, Juri, when you know something and you've been doing it for a long time, you kind of take it for granted. And it's almost like, well, doesn't everybody else know this? Well, no, they don't. They don't know it until they've learned it, until they've put it into their own body, their own way of dealing with things. So I realized I had many things that other people in similar circumstances that just hadn't had that kind of experience.
Well, thank you. I know you have to get going. So let's
Mm.
ask the last question, which is the gift that came from the adversity. You mentioned it a little bit before, but can you tell our audience what was the gift that came from your adversity?
Mm. I think for me, oh, there are so many things, but I want to share one of my favorite quotes, and this really says a lot about. I could put all the gifts, if you like, into this quote. It comes from the Course in Miracles, and and it says that love brings up everything unlike itself for the purpose of healing. So if we're in a relationship, we're having difficulties, that love will bring that up to the surface for it to be healed. So for me, this brought up things that I could look at, that I could explore, that I could find bits of wisdom from all these things for myself, but also to share with other people. So this has been a gift in so many different ways. And I guess that, that saying that love brings up everything unlike itself for the purpose of healing, for me, that says it most succinctly, I guess. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bill, for sharing your story today. And before you go, if you can give advice to somebody maybe who just got diagnosed with cancer, what is your biggest advice that you can give?
Mm. Ask questions. Ask questions of your doctors, of your health practitioners. Ask questions. Um, get informed and be responsible for. So this is your condition. This is your situation. It's neither good nor bad in and of itself. It's what you're going to make of it that you'll either spiral up or spiral down. So you have to be really clear about your approach, because your approach will influence your outcomes. That's for sure.
Well, thank you very much, Bill, for being here. Before I let you go, I just want to tell a quick story about my grandmother who survived the World War II and a big earthquake. And she was orphaned and she lost her husband, actually, my grandpa, a year before I was born. When she got diagnosed with lymph node cancer, I was in America. I flew back. And then she was like this: why are you even here? And I'm like, what do you mean? And then she's like, oh, cancer is nothing compared to World War II.
Yeah.
I have house, I have family, I have doctors around me. I had none of that. So she was like fighter, and she it didn't phase her at all.
Yep. Perspective. It's perspective. Yep.
Yeah. So and then after a couple treatment, she was still performing and doing like shamisen, which is like an instrument teaching to seniors. She was in the 70s and she was performing. So thank
That's
you.
beautiful. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you for giving us a perspective as well. And then for the people who might be suffering with the cancer diagnosis right now, listen to this story. Really apply for the tools that Bill had shared here. So thank you, Bill, again for coming all the way from Australia, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. I will. And you too. Thank you.
Thank you.